Hey YouTube land, welcome back again to another action figure review by Tycondrius, and today we're having a look at something fairly special. Now, what this is a 3D printed figure that I picked up online. I'll put a link in the description of the video where you can pick these up, but it's done by a company called Morphonauts, and if you're familiar with them, you know what they do. But the person behind it generally does kind of 3D printing homages to different kind of universes, figure lines, kind of etc. And I saw these ones. He started off with well, they started off with two figures of this type. Now, what these are, or this is a homage to these guys. And if you're not familiar with these guys, these are the old, now I don't have the one that this one is based on, but these are the old Kenner Takara, or not Kenner, Hasbro Takara Battle Beasts, and these were around in the 80s. I only have these three. These are the only ones I have left. I picked these two up more recently. This is one that I've had knocking around since I started collecting these things way back in the 80s. It was one of my favorite ones, the crab one. There was a spider one. They were all based on anthropomorphic kind of creatures with kind of armor and weapons. Now, I don't have any of the weapons for any of these guys. Obviously, this one is based on a sloth, and the idea was behind these is they were kind of a rock, paper, scissors style thing. So I'm not sure if my hands are warm enough to get these. They have the same kind of rub symbols like the Transformers. The difference being is there was fire, wood, and water. And basically, fire burns wood, water puts out fire, and wood floats in water. So like whoever had whichever one was kind of like the winner of that. There was like a mini game kind of thing going on with him. Now, the way this guy comes packaged is in one of these. Well, this is the way my one came packaged. There's a couple of different options for these. So the options are, you got, I think it's 2.5 inch scale, 3.75 inch scale, which is kind of the standard 1:18 scale, and then the one that I opted for, which is this guy, which is the 4-inch scale. So if I bring in my tape measure, he should measure up to 4 inches. So you can see he's around the 4-inch scale. This one is based on the character called Gruesome Gator. There was actually two crocodile based ones, reptile based ones. Well, there's several reptile based. There's some cool snake ones as well. I remember having one of the snake ones as a kid that had like snake appendages for its arms, kind of similar how the crab one has like a claw and stuff like that. It had like, you know, stuff like that. So what you get in this is you get the figure, and you get the small little how to add or how to put it together. Now again, there is another option when you're buying these. So I bought mine pre-assembled, and it was handy. I didn't have to kind of heat up anything and take apart. One other thing to note is because these are 3D printed and there's no pre-painted option, I'll just give you an example of how he arrived. There's some spare bits knocking around in the packaging, so bear with me a moment. Now, this was my first kind of run into 3D printed figures. So you have, these are his extra hands. There's an extra set of hands. Now, from what I can see, they're the exact same as the ones that are on him. They're just an extra set in case anything goes wrong. They do, there's a couple of extra joints as well, which is very handy, because it came in very handy for one of mine, if I can find it. It was in the box a second ago. Yes. So this is the original neck joint on my one. You can see the peg has snapped. It should be like a large peg with a smaller peg on this side. And when I was messing around with it, what I did was I dumped them into hot water heated them up in warm water, and I was manipulating it, and then it kind of snapped on me. So just be wary. These things they're intended to be posed, but they're not intended to be super posable or anything like that. So there is some posability on this guy. Now, this is one that I painted. You can see his weaponry is not fully finished yet. And so as I'm moving him around, you will see areas that I didn't get around to or need to be touched up. I haven't figured out a way of how to get him perfectly painted without any paint rub. So it's a kind of a learning experience for myself. So, but it is articulated. So I will go give a rundown on the articulation. Now, this whole big armor piece here on his chest is actually a separate part. So what I did was, it was one of the reasons why that neck joint snapped on me, is because in order to get that this whole armor piece off, which is really nice because it actually has a hinge on the shoulders as well to move it out of the way for the shoulders. In fact, you don't really need to get it out of the way of the shoulders. They kind of don't really bump into it, but if you want to, you have that. But in order for me to actually get this to come out or come off, I had to take off the head, because as you can see, the head actually goes right over that armor piece. So I heated it up, pulled this piece off. I was contemplating taking him completely apart and taking off the waist section and doing it separately. As you can see, you might be able to see that on screen. Some of it's not fully hit. I didn't get it fully right with the paint. I just move his arm out of the way. So like, there's areas on him that are not, completed with the paint, but for the most part, I'm happy with the way he turned out. So for this guy, I used predominantly Citadel paints. I used, because the original character for this that he's based on is kind of white with this green armor, I kind of opted to kind of replicate it. You can paint it whatever way you want. This is just the way I did mine. So I opted to go with white for the crocodile skin and green for the armor. And what I did was I used as it was my first kind of attempt at painting these sort of resin printed things, I gave it a base coat or a priming coat, and everything I would use wasn't airbrushed or anything, so it was all hand painted. So I hand painted on was it Fortress Standard Mechanicus Grey from the Citadel range as a base, and then once that was dry, it gave me stuff for the paint to stick onto, and then I started painting this with the skin tone is painted with pallid witch flesh, and it's just several layers of watered down pallid witch flesh just built up on it to get a nice even kind of coat on it. Once that was dry, I hit it with a wash of Agrax Earth's Shade to give it that kind of, to pick out all the details. You see where it pooled in some areas, it made it darker and stuff like that, so it's not the best, but it looks kind of nice. And then for the armor, what I did with the armor, I painted that with Castilian green, and I gave it a wash of Nun Oil, which gave it that kind of slightly weathered look to it. And then just for the red or the yellow or the red parts, it's just Memphiston red. Same with the eye. The eyes were Memphiston red with what's it, Evil Sun's red on top of that. I didn't go Evil Sun's on the armor parts, I just left it red. The weapon, I was going to paint just gold, and then I decided I opted for something slightly bit different. So what it is actually, it's brass scorpion, I think it's called. So it's base coat of brass scorpion, or well, I did the same thing I did with the skin tone, with painted it the grey, the standard Mechanicus grey, then base coated it with brass scorpion. Once that was dry, I gave it like maybe a couple of several layers of coats with it. Once that was dry, I gave it a hit with one of the shades. Which one is it? It's like a blue shade. Instead of like a black wash, instead of black wash, I gave it a blue shade. I can't remember the name of it. And then dry brushed this. Did a heavy dry brush of the gold over it to make it look like his original weapons. The cool thing about this weapon, I don't really want to do it on screen, but You can see here there's a peg, and on the opposite side there's a hole. You can actually connect the weapon together to make it a two-handed weapon, which is quite nice. So you have an option of the weapons as well. The weapon is basically replicating his original weapon. Again, I don't have any of the original weapons for these guys, but the head, the figure overall is quite nice. So articulation wise, most of it is ball joints, and then there's some hinges. So you got a hinge in the elbow with a swivel. Then there is a ball joint in the wrist. There is a ball joint in the shoulder. You can move the shoulder up. It's a dual ball joint. You can actually see here where the paint has actually started rubbing off. But it is a dual ball joint, so that you can kind of kick it forward a bit and back. The legs can split out really that much. I don't want to overdo it in case I snap that the thing. There's dual jointed knees, which is quite nice. Now, one thing I will note on my one, if I just pop the knee, the actual knee on my one is actually upside down. I think this triangular bit is supposed to be the right way up, because it matches the design of the knee, whereas this one I think got reversed when it was being assembled. It doesn't make too much of a difference. It's just something to note. The legs are on really good ball joints. There is no peg holes in the feet, but he doesn't seem to have any issue standing. He's quite nicely articulated, so there is a kind of a ball joint system with rocker ankles on that. The arms can be positioned. You can do 360 on the arms, which is quite nice, and the head is on a ball joint. As I said, you can get some kind of side to side, up and down. It is a dual ball joint, but just be careful. There is a peg on the, or kind of a blank area here on the back of the armor. I'm not sure if there's supposed to be a peg or there was supposed to be something extra to clip in, so you could actually attach the weaponry to its back. And then there's upper waist joint, which is quite nice, and a lower waist joint, but it is very tight, so just be wary of that. But overall, if I just get him to stand on his feet, he stands very nicely and fairly flat on his feet. Now, the other two figures that they did, the other two kind of guys that they did figures for is I think it's one of the fox style ones, and then it's one of the bird ones as well. I'm tempted to get both, just to paint them up as well to see what I can do. I probably won't, if I do pick them up, I probably won't go with the standard colors on them, as in based on their toys. I might do something else, but then again I might just go and just redo them as the toy colors. So for size comparisons, I'm going to bring these, just clear the space, or clear the deck. So here is the Robert Pattinson Batman figure from Spin Masters. So we'll get in a few different figures from different lines. Here is one of the G.I. Joe 25th anniversary, well, Rise of Cobra, based on the modern sculpt figures. It's the Mars officer from the Mars Trooper 3-pack. We have Hayatoy's Robocop. I just get his foot flat. Bear with me a moment. We have Hayatoy's Dread, which is the unpainted grayscale version. We have one of the Fresh Monkey Fiction Eagle Force figures. Let's see how much we can bring in here. We have Deathstroke from Spin Masters as well. This is the more kind of cartoony line as opposed to the movie lines. There is a movie line for Black Adam, which I haven't seen any of the figures for yet, but I might pick them up as I go along. Do we have anything from the galaxy far, far away? Oh yes, we do. We have Obi-Wan, the Jedi in hiding version from the Obi-Wan TV series. We'll kick it up a notch and bring in one of the Joy Toy Space Marines, because he's right next to me. So you can see how tall these guys are compared to other 3¼ inch scale figures. This guy is actually in scale to 3 3/4 inch. And we have a Fortnite figure. This is Midas in his god armor, or whatever armor. And do we have anything else that I can think of to bring in? Where is, yes. Bring in Ian Malcolm. Is this, which version of this is? This is the Legacy Collection version of Ian Malcolm. So you can see the scaling. So all in all, they scale really nice depending on which option you go for. So, as I said, this is the 4-inch scale option. And he looks really cool next to other 4-inch scale figures. The only downside is you do have to do the legwork yourself on them, as in they're not pre-painted. It would be nice to see if they could do pre-painted, or even if it's not pre-painted, if they could do the printing in specific colors would be nice. So if, for example, I know I'm kind of nitpicking here because they are really nice, but the way the arms are, this whole gauntlet section is an actual separate piece. If that was done in that kind of green color as a print, it would make the printing side of things a lot easier. Probably you still have the paint rub, but like if you could get the white plastic prints for the legs and the torso and the head and stuff like that, it'd probably make painting some of these things a little bit easier for people. Again, I think this whole leg section is a separate print as well, so if those are done in green, like the thing and the armor, because the armor is a separate piece anyway, it would closely match the original and be kind of less painting involved for people who are, like, as I said, this is my first go at kind of painting some of these things, but I've painted miniatures for most of my life, so I know a couple of things and tricks and tips for how to kind of make things look a little bit cool. But overall, he is pretty decent. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this quick review for this figure. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers, guys.